Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The garbage truck outside had just knocked over our recycling bin. That's the only reason I was even home at that hour. If the noise hadn't woken me up, I never would have heard her say it. And if I hadn't forgotten to mute my phone, I wouldn't have stopped halfway down the stairs when she suddenly paused mid-sentence. I could see her reflection in the mirror hanging near the kitchen. She was pacing, barefoot, phone pressed to her ear with her shoulder, eyes narrowed like she was unloading something heavy. "I don't love him," she said. "Not really. I don't even think I ever did." I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I didn't even understand at first if she was talking about me. Maybe it was a movie review, a book, a friend. But then she said it. "I can't stand being with Marcus anymore. He's like beige wallpaper. He's just there. I swear, I feel lonelier with him than I did before I met him." Beige wallpaper. My name. I clutched the railing so hard, I thought the wood might crack. My mouth was dry. My ears were ringing. But she just kept talking. "I know I sound awful, but I'm so tired of pretending. He's always tiptoeing around like I might break if he says something wrong. It's exhausting. I need someone who sees me, Not someone who just agrees and apologizes and disappears into himself like fog." There was a pause, and then she laughed, not like she used to when I made dumb jokes. This laugh had teeth. It bit down. "No, he has no clue. Honestly, he'd probably write me a thank you card if I left him. Poor guy." I walked right back up the stairs without a sound. That day, I said nothing. Not during breakfast. Not when she asked if I was okay. Not when she leaned in for a quick kiss on the cheek and I flinched without meaning to. Because the moment wasn't about rage. It wasn't even betrayal. It was erasure. She didn't just fall out of love. She never really saw me to begin with. I was just there, but not for much longer. She wanted space. She was about to get more than she bargained for. She had no idea. None. That night, she curled up next to me in bed like everything was normal. Like she hadn't described me as beige wallpaper just 12 hours earlier. Her leg draped over mine like it used to. Her breath warmed the back of my neck. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, eyes open, wondering how long I'd been a background character in my own marriage. The next few days I didn't confront her. I observed. Every smile, every word she said, every time she touched me. I studied them like a stranger would. And slowly, something inside me began to rot. I noticed things I had never paid attention to. Her fake laughter when I told a joke. How she always checked her phone when I started talking. How her hugs ended a second too early. I realized she wasn't slipping away. She had already left. She was just polite enough to leave the lights on behind her. But then something happened. She started getting nicer. Sweeter. She brought home my favorite pastry. She sat down next to me during my late-night movie binge and said, "You always pick the good ones." She even asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend, just the two of us. It was terrifying. Like watching a magician saw a woman in half, smiling the whole time, while you're the only one in the room who knows it isn't a trick. I think she could sense something was off. I think she started to feel the distance I was building. But instead of admitting anything, she covered it in sugar. Compliments, kisses, offers to cook dinner. It wasn't guilt. It was control. She wanted to keep me calm, keep me compliant, until she decided how this story ended. But I wasn't going to give her that. I started planning. I found a temporary rental online. Paid in cash. I told my boss I needed to use up some vacation days for mental health reasons. I packed a single bag and kept it in the trunk of my car, hidden under a blanket. Every move I made was careful, quiet, strategic. I knew if I confronted her now, she'd spin it, cry, deny, maybe even accuse me of misunderstanding what I'd heard. And part of me, the sad, soft part, might believe her. I couldn't risk it. I needed to vanish on my terms. Not explode. Not argue. Just disappear. The night before I left, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and watched her sleep. She looked peaceful, innocent, like someone who had never said what she said. But I knew better now. I saw it for what it was. The next morning, she woke up to an empty house. And a letter. One that didn't beg. One that didn't accuse. One that simply told the truth. But I didn't expect what she did next. I left just before sunrise. The street was quiet, a light mist clinging to the ground like it didn't want to let go. My footsteps felt louder than they should have. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even lock it. I just placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, right next to the half-eaten apple she always left in the mornings. She'd find it. She always did. In the letter, I didn't write much. Just a few lines. I told her I heard everything. that I knew how she truly felt, that I wasn't angry, just exhausted, and that I wasn't going to fight to stay where I clearly wasn't wanted. I signed it with my full name, not M, not Babe, not your husband. Just Marcus. Clean. Done. I sat in my car for nearly 30 minutes before I pulled out of the driveway. Not because I had doubts, I didn't, but because I kept wondering if she'd come running out. If she'd somehow know, like people do in movies, and chase after me barefoot, crying, apologizing, begging for another chance. But no one came. Just a squirrel darting across the road and the sound of a distant lawnmower. I checked into the small rental I'd arranged. It was a single-room cabin outside of town, mostly meant for fishermen or solo hikers. No internet. Weak cell signal. A fridge that hummed like it had asthma. But it was quiet. And for once, so was my head. For 5 hours, I didn't hear from her. Then 6. Then 9. Around 6:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not a call, a text. Did you seriously leave over something you thought you heard? I stared at it like it was in another language. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No confusion, no fear. Just deflection. Denial. She followed it up with another message 5 minutes later. You're acting dramatic. We can talk when you cool down. Dramatic. After everything. I'd expected shock. Maybe even rage. But this? It was dismissal. Her tone wasn't panicked. It was annoyed. Like I'd overreacted to a missed dinner reservation or a wrong coffee order. That's when it hit me. She hadn't been preparing to leave me. She'd been counting on me to leave myself. And now that I had, she could rewrite the story however she wanted. Poor her, abandoned by the emotionally unstable husband who misunderstood everything. She could cry to her friends, get sympathy, keep the house, and never once have to admit what she said, what she meant, or how long she'd been living a double life behind that tired smile. But I wasn't going to disappear quietly. That night, I made one phone call. Not to her, not to a friend, to someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Someone who once told me, if she ever breaks your heart, I hope I'm the first call. Tomorrow, everything would change. Her name is Lee. Not Leah. Not Lee. Lee. Spelled like a mystery novel heroine. We met in college. For 3 semesters, we were inseparable before I met my wife. Back then, Lee had this unfiltered honesty that made people uncomfortable in the best way. She didn't fake smiles, didn't sugarcoat. She'd look you in the eye and tell you your shirt was hideous, but your heart was worth fighting for. We drifted apart after I got serious with my wife. Lee always said she saw something off in our dynamic, but I chalked it up to her being protective. Turns out, she saw the rot before I did. I called her from that dusty cabin at exactly 8:12 p.m. I thought it would go to voicemail. Instead, I got 2 rings and then her voice. Marcus. I hadn't said a word yet. Somehow she knew. Yeah, I said, barely above a whisper. Silence for a beat. Then, she finally broke you, didn't she? And just like that, the dam cracked. I didn't cry, at least not right away, but my throat closed up and my hands shook like I'd been holding everything in for a decade. Lee didn't ask for details. She didn't rush. She just listened. I told her about the phone call I overheard, the beige wallpaper comment, the text messages, the way my wife made my leaving feel like her inconvenience. And Lee didn't say, I told you so. She just exhaled deeply and said, okay, let's burn the script. What script? I asked. The one she wrote for you. The one where you're spineless, forgettable, and easy to blame. Let's rewrite it. I don't know why those words hit me like they did, but something inside me flipped. For years, I thought being quiet made me peaceful. That avoiding conflict meant I was mature. That compromise was love. But Lee was right. I'd been living someone else's version of me, edited down to be more palatable for someone who didn't even want me. I wasn't peaceful. I was erased. The next morning, I drove back into town. Not to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I went to a lawyer instead. Turns out, leaving the house without a word wasn't the smartest legal move. But I explained everything, and the lawyer, an older man with a dry tone and kind eyes, told me I wasn't the first husband to be emotionally manipulated into vanishing quietly. People like her, he said, they count on your silence to write your ending. That night, I received another text from her. So this is it. You're just done? After everything I've put into this marriage? Everything she's put in. She hadn't noticed that I took my journals, the ones I'd kept for 8 years, filled with dates, quotes, events, little moments she wouldn't remember, but I did. All of them quietly painting a picture of who really carried the weight. And I was about to use every page. She wanted me gone. Now she'd have to face what that actually meant. 3 days after I left, she told our mutual friends I had walked out in the middle of an argument, that I was going through something and needed space to figure himself out. One of them texted me to say they were sorry we were fighting and hoped I'd come home soon. At first, I didn't understand. I hadn't told anyone what happened. I was still processing it myself. But then Lee sent me a screenshot from my wife's social media. A smiling selfie. Captioned, "Some storms are meant to pass." Hoping he finds his way back. I still believe in us. I stared at the screen like it had betrayed me personally. She wasn't just rewriting the narrative. She was weaponizing it. Making herself the victim. Painting me as the emotionally unstable husband who bolted out of nowhere, leaving her confused and heartbroken. And everyone bought it, because of course they did. She was charming when she needed to be. Soft-spoken. The kind of person who'd ask you how you were doing and make you feel like you mattered, even when she didn't mean it. What none of them knew, what I hadn't told anyone until then, was that this wasn't the first time. I flipped open one of my journals. April 14th, 3 years ago. A conversation we had in the car after I caught her texting someone named Caleb at 1 a.m. Her excuse? He was a co-worker, just helping her through a difficult season. She'd cried, told me I was being insecure, that she needed emotional support and I should have been more understanding. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. I wrote it all down that night, so I wouldn't forget how I felt. How small I'd made myself to keep the peace. And now she was doing it again. Different tactic, same goal. Twist the narrative until I was the problem. But this time I had a plan. I printed out pages from my journals. Not just words, but photos. Screenshots. Emails I hadn't looked at in years. A forwarded message from Caleb that I had buried in a folder labeled miscellaneous. One line stood out. "I wish he wasn't in the way. Maybe then we could actually have a weekend." Back then, I didn't confront her with it. I had convinced myself he meant nothing, that it was a joke. But now it painted a very different picture. I put the pages in an envelope and dropped them in the mailbox of the same friend she'd lied to. No note, no explanation, just the truth. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't even interested in sympathy. I just wanted the mask to slip. I wanted the people around her to finally see what I'd spent years doubting myself about. By the time evening came, she called me. Not texted. Called. I stared at the screen, watching her name flash. I didn't answer. 30 seconds later, another call. Then another. Then a voicemail. "Marcus," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop. This isn't fair. You're ruining my life." That's when I smiled for the first time in days. Because finally, it wasn't just my life unraveling. The next message didn't come from her. It came from a name I hadn't seen in years, Caleb Reeves. I stared at the screen so long the notification disappeared. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I tapped to open it. No introduction. No apology. Just 5 words. "Can we talk?" Face to face. It hit me like a sucker punch. For years, he had been the ghost in our house. Unseen, unnamed. Just a whisper in her phone late at night. A name on a work invite. A shadow in the background of conversations she claimed were harmless. I had spent so much time convincing myself I was paranoid, needy, insecure. But there he was, real, direct, and suddenly wanting to talk. That only happens when someone is scared. I didn't respond. Not right away. I waited a full day. During that time, she sent me for more voicemails. Each one more frantic than the last. The last one nearly cracked her voice. "Marcus, please, don't do this. You don't understand what you're starting." But I did. I finally did. I met Caleb at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. Public. I wanted to see his face, not to punch it, not to scream, but to watch it, to know what kind of man he was. When I walked in, he stood awkwardly, like he wasn't sure if a handshake was appropriate. I didn't offer one. I just sat across from him, waiting. "I didn't know she was still married," he started. I didn't believe him. "She said you were separated, that you were only staying in the same house for financial reasons." He looked down at the table. "I swear to you, Marcus, I wouldn't have gotten involved if I knew." "You mean stayed involved?" I corrected. "Because you knew at some point. And you didn't stop." He didn't argue. He just nodded, lips pressed together. That silence told me more than anything else. I came here because, he continued slowly. She told me you left voluntarily. That you disappeared. But then I started hearing things, and then she panicked. Told me to delete every message, every photo. Said she could lose everything. That's when I knew she'd lied to both of us. He slid something across the table. A flash drive. I don't want anything from you. I thought you should have the truth. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I just picked it up and left. Back at the cabin, my hands shook as I opened the files. Dozens of screenshots. Messages between them. Photos. Some recent. Some going back years. The worst wasn't the romantic ones. I'd already suspected that. The worst were the casual ones. The way she mocked me in texts. The way she called me the extra weight. How she laughed about my love letters. Called them adorable little trophies of guilt. Like I was some kind of charity project. It wasn't just cheating. It was contempt. I sat there until the sun went down, feeling hollow. But there was one thing I hadn't expected, a voice memo. Her voice. Her laugh. Marcus will never leave, she said, light as air. He's too afraid to be alone. That's the beauty of it. I can have everything, security, attention, and real passion, and he'll just smile and fold the laundry. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just walked away from a wife. I had escaped a cage. The next morning, I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't threaten. I did something far simpler. I uploaded every screenshot, every message, every photo, and that voice memo, the one where she mocked me like I was a wounded pet, into a single folder titled Clarity, and sent it anonymously to 3 people, her sister, her best friend, and her manager. The subject line was just one word, perspective. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't want applause. I didn't want chaos. I wanted silence. I wanted the truth to bleed into the cracks she'd painted over. Let them ask questions. Let her squirm. Let her play defense in a game she thought she was coaching. Hours passed. No signal. I took a walk through the woods behind the cabin, let the leaves crunch underfoot, and tried to remember what it felt like to be a person who wasn't always one apology away from losing his worth. By the time I returned, there were 12 missed calls, 7 texts, 3 voicemails. She was unraveling. One text stood out. You're ruining my life because you're bitter. Grow up, Marcus. No admission. No remorse. Just fury that the image she'd built, the one she curated like a perfect little snow globe, had shattered, and the people inside were starting to ask questions. That night, Lee called me. Her voice was electric, not with joy, but with fierce protectiveness. She came to my place, she said, crying, trying to explain. But you should have seen her face when I told her I already knew. I sat down on the bed. What did she do? She broke, screamed something about betrayal, then stormed out. Marcus, she's scared now. For the first time, you're the one with the truth on your side. And she can't control how it spreads. I didn't feel victorious. I felt still, like I was standing in the center of a room I used to call home, finally seeing it without rose-tinted glass. The broken walls, the cracks in the foundation. The mess I'd been pretending wasn't there. But I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like someone waking up. Then came the message that changed everything. It was from her mother. Marcus, I don't know what happened between you two, but I just want you to know. I always saw you. I'm sorry she didn't. I read it 3 times before my chest caved in. Not from pain, from release. Because I didn't realize until then how much I'd needed someone, anyone, to say that I wasn't invisible, that I hadn't imagined it all. That night, I wrote one final message to my wife. Not to fight, not to gloat. Just this. You once said I'd never leave because I was afraid to be alone. You were wrong. I was afraid of being with someone who made me feel alone. But not anymore. You don't get to narrate my life anymore. I do. Goodbye. And then I blocked her. Everywhere. But her story wasn't done. Because the final blow? That came from someone I didn't even see coming. A week passed. Then 2. I stayed quiet. Not because I was hiding, but because, for the first time in years, I had nothing left to explain. The truth was out. Her masks had cracked, and all I had to do was step aside and let the consequences catch up to her. And they did. Lee messaged me one afternoon. Thought you'd want to know. She got transferred to another department. Word got around. Turns out, her manager didn't appreciate the lies or the inappropriate connection to a coworker like Caleb. Apparently, the screenshots and voice memo didn't just expose her betrayal to friends and family. They reached her workplace too. People stopped buying the poor abandoned wife narrative. Even her own sister reached out to me again, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. And me? I didn't return to the cabin. I didn't go back to our house either. I signed a lease on a small second-floor apartment with creaky wood floors, too much morning light, and a tiny reading nook. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Mine, without manipulation. Mine, without shame. I started writing again. Not in journals this time. Real stories. Messy, emotional, awkwardly honest stories. The kind I had silenced for years. Turns out, when you stop trying to keep someone else's peace, you finally get to hear your own voice. Then, last week, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting instantly. You got what you wanted. I hope you're happy. Just know you were never enough, and you never will be. I smiled, folded the letter, and dropped it in the recycling bin without another thought. Because here's the thing. She was right, but not in the way she meant. I was never enough for the version of her that needed someone to shrink so she could feel big. I was never enough for someone who measured love by how quiet I could be. But for the first time in my life, I was finally enough for me. That's the real ending. Not fireworks. Not revenge. Just peace. The kind you earn when you stop begging to be seen and start seeing yourself. You've been watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had to walk away to finally find your voice, hit like, subscribe, and share your story in the comments. And tell us, what's one shocking moment from history that changed everything for someone who was underestimated? We'd love to read your answers.